There are moments in life when everything feels like it's moving too fast, when people rush past one another without ever really seeing who's right in front of them. And then, once in a while, something small happens, something so gentle, so unexpected, that it stops you in your tracks and reminds you what it means to be human. This story begins with one of those moments, the kind that changes a life without anyone realizing it at first. If you've ever felt invisible, overlooked, or simply worn down by the world, this story is for you. Because sometimes, the smallest act of kindness doesn't just brighten someone's day. It can rewrite the direction of their whole life. Before we start, don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment to support the channel, Kindness Journey. Your engagement helps us share more heart-touching stories with people all around the world. The story begins on a quiet Tuesday morning in a small American town, a place where everyone knew each other well enough to nod hello but not always well enough to ask how they were really doing. In that town lived a man named Daniel, a middle-aged mechanic whose life had become a routine circle of work, home, sleep, repeat. He wasn't unhappy, but he wasn't really living either. Most days felt like he was simply going through the motions, drifting past people and places without much thought. Daniel's shop sat on a corner near an old grocery store, the kind with faded signs and a familiar smell that brought people back to their childhood. Every morning, he'd unlock the shop, flip on the lights, and wait for customers to trickle in. Some days were busy, some were painfully slow. But on one particular morning, things were different. A young woman walked in holding her car keys tightly in her fist. Her name was Emily. She had recently moved to town and looked exhausted, as if she had carried the weight of the past few years on her shoulders. Her car engine had failed on her way to work. She didn't know anyone in the area, didn't have much money to spare, and wasn't sure what she would do if the repair cost more than she could afford. Daniel noticed the worry in her eyes before she even said a word. Something about the way she stood, hesitant, tired, almost defeated, made him pause. When she explained her situation, he nodded and told her he'd take a look. But instead of charging her a diagnostic fee up front, he simply said, "Don't worry. I'll check it first." While he worked on the car, Emily sat outside on a bench, tapping her foot anxiously. She kept glancing at her phone, at the street, at the time. It was clear she had somewhere important to be but didn't want to explain. Daniel finally came out after an hour and told her the issue was serious enough to take a few days, but he could offer her a temporary solution. He pulled out the keys to an old loaner car he rarely used and handed them to her. "Take this for now. No charge," he said. "Just bring it back when yours is ready." Emily stared at him, confused. "You don't even know me," she said softly. Daniel shrugged with a smile. "We all need help sometimes." That single act of kindness hit her harder than she expected. Life hadn't been gentle with her recently. She had lost her job, left a relationship that had drained her, and moved to town hoping for a fresh start. But everything seemed to fall apart at once. She had been feeling alone in a way that scared her. Yet here was someone offering help with no strings attached, no questions, no judgment. Over the next few days, Emily returned to the shop several times. Sometimes to check on her car, sometimes just to talk. She told Daniel bits and pieces about her life, the setbacks, the tough decisions, the disappointment she felt in herself. Daniel didn't offer big speeches or dramatic advice. He listened. He nodded. He made space for her words. And that was enough. On the fourth day, when her car was ready, she tried to pay him more than the cost of the repairs. Daniel pushed the money back gently. "Just pay what's fair," he said. "And when you're in a better place, help someone else. That's the only repayment I want." Emily left the shop with tears in her eyes, but for the first time in a long time, they weren't tears of frustration or fear. They were tears of relief, tears that come when you finally feel seen. Weeks passed. Emily found a better job, settled into her new routine, and slowly began rebuilding the life she thought she had lost. But she never forgot Daniel's kindness. It stayed with her, like a soft reminder that even in the hardest seasons, goodness still exists. One cold morning in December, Emily walked into a cafe near her office. At the counter, she noticed a teenage boy frantically emptying his pockets, embarrassed as he realized he didn't have enough money to pay for his breakfast sandwich. People behind him sighed impatiently. The cashier looked annoyed. The boy's face flushed bright red. Emily stepped forward without hesitation and said, "I've got it." She paid for his meal as if it were the most natural thing in the world. The boy looked at her the way she had once looked at Daniel, surprised, almost disbelieving. "Why would you do that?" he whispered. Emily smiled. "Because someone did something kind for me when I needed it. Now it's my turn." The boy nodded slowly, holding the warm sandwich like it was something precious. And in that moment, Emily realized she wasn't just repaying a kindness. She was continuing it. Passing it on. Creating a ripple that might reach someone she'd never meet. Kindness works like that. It doesn't stop with one person. It grows, moves, spreads. A mechanic helping a stranger leads to a young woman helping a teenager, which may lead to another moment, another person, another act of compassion. And so on. Months later, Emily visited Daniel's shop again, not because her car needed fixing, but simply to say thank you. She told him about the boy in the cafe, about her new job, about how things were finally falling into place. Daniel listened quietly, the same way he always did, and gave her that familiar, gentle smile. "I told you," he said. "We all need help sometimes. And the world becomes a little better every time we choose to give it." As she left the shop that day, Emily realized something else. Kindness doesn't just help the person who receives it. It changes the person who gives it too. It softens you. Strengthens you. Reminds you that you still have the power to make the world kinder, even in small ways. And maybe that's the heart of this whole story. One act of kindness can outlive the moment it happens in. It can weave through a community, shaping people's lives without them even knowing where it began. So if you take anything away from this story, let it be this: kindness is never wasted. Even when the world feels cold, even when you're tired or unsure, your kindness matters more than you think. Somewhere, someone might be waiting for a moment just like the one you can give.